On this episode of the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Metro Ford of OKC, we continue our breakdown of OU's roster by looking at the offensive line, and then we are joined by the NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, Dane Brugler. We talked to Dane about the OU guys in this draft, Creed, Ronnie, Rhamondre, Trey Brown. We also discussed some of the big draft storylines. Who is QB number 3? How high will Kyle Pitts go? Slater or Sewell? There's a little bit of everything. It is a great interview. Please download and subscribe to the podcast, rate it 5 stars, and write us a good review. Follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Oklahoma Breakdown on any of those, and you'll find us. All right. Our man Michael Hosty will kick this thing off. It's time for the Oklahoma Breakdown. It's a beautiful Monday, April 19th. And you're listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown with Ikard and Lehman, presented by Metro Ford of OKC. Metro Ford of OKC's inventory is the best of the best. In fact, they own more Black Widows and more 2021 F-150s than anybody else. They're the only Roush and Rocky Ridge dealer in the state. You can find a ride at Metro Ford of OKC that you can't find anywhere else in Oklahoma. Just like their selection of vehicles is unmatched, so is their customer service. The Metro Ford of OKC Difference Program is included with the purchase of every new and pre-owned vehicle. It includes free oil changes for life, lifetime window tint, lifetime nitrogen fill for your tires, complimentary wheel locks, interior fabric protection, complimentary service loaners, a complimentary shuttle with service, and a complimentary multi-point inspection. Come feel the performance when you test drive a Roush or Raptor, and come see why the difference is real at Metro Ford of OKC. Visit metrofordofokc.com for more information, or go to the dealership and tell them we sent you. Now, Ted, before we get to anything else, April 19th is clearly a meaningful and somber day for so many Oklahomans. I just want to let everyone know that was affected by that tragic day in 1995. And it affected so many of us, right? That we are thinking of them and praying for them, because I know that a lot of people around here live with the weight of that day every single day of their lives.
How old were you?
I was 4, and it is about the only memory I have. And I've talked about my memory before. It's about the only vivid memory I have that young. I remember it so clearly, and maybe because it was such a crazy experience, but I was at Villa Teresa on the monkey bars, whole thing. I remember it like clear as day.
Oh, dang. So you're just
I was like a
what?
kid.
A mile, not even a mile away
No,
though.
we very close. Yeah, very close. So yeah, I remember walking around this girl in my class. We were out for recess. This girl was standing close to the building. Windows blew out, piece of glass in her leg. Like I remember it vividly.
Wow, that's crazy. Man, it's nuts. Nuts. It's it's been a long time, 95, but gosh, I still have vivid memory. Everyone does. It's one of those things. We always say that you have those memories where everyone remembers where they were. Like this is one of those where everyone remembers where they were. So, yeah, just amazing.
Yeah. And I did want to say, if you haven't made it out to the Oklahoma City National Memorial yet, please go. It's something I think that everyone, but certainly all Oklahomans, should go take in. And it's a lot. There's no doubt that it's a heavy and emotional experience, but it's extremely powerful. And if you haven't had the chance to go, it's one of the best museums in the country. There's no doubt about it. In my opinion, it is the best, but it's an experience that I think people should take part in. It's fantastically done. And then you realize kind of what that event, what the Oklahoma City bombing did to this state, and kind of how it has shaped us since that day. I mean, it's crazy how impactful it was. And when you go back and you think about it, obviously, and I've said it plenty of times, but I hope Timothy McVeigh is suffering terribly in hell. Like I've always felt that way, and I don't think that's ever going to change. I know forgiveness is supposed to be a thing, but Sorry, man. I mean, sorry.
Leave that one to someone else.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm with you though. We take like if we have people that come see us from out of state, never been here before, we go up there and kind of walk around, show them the area. It's weird that it was such a huge deal, obviously, and at the time, obviously a huge national story, but it's been long enough now where there's a lot of people that don't know anything about it, really haven't heard much about it, and yeah, it's that memorial and everything down there is amazing.
Yeah, so we just wanted to start this with that. We're thinking of all y'all, and I know it's a tough day for a lot of people here in the state of Oklahoma. Okay, now easy transition, right? Football, easy transition from the Oklahoma City bombing. Don't forget, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and let us know who you want us to try to get on the podcast. This episode, we've got Dane Brugler, the author of The Beast, Teddy, the most ridiculous NFL draft guide on planet Earth. So fun conversation with Dane. And then we've got some offensive line talk. So this is pretty much the episode I've been the most excited for.
Well, of course it is. I'm sure this is one of those where I'm going to sit back and I'm going to fire questions your way and tell me why guys are good, why they suck, why we're going to be awesome at this position, why we're going to be terrible. I can't wait.
Let's just say, hey, you remember the Facebook relationship statuses? I don't know if those are still a thing. I don't get on Facebook that often anymore, but remember the one that said it's complicated?
Yes, I do.
That's where I think we're at with the offensive line situation. Okay. So let's get into it. The O-line, I think this position group, I really do think it will determine just how good OU can be this season. And now I kind of always feel that way, but after what we saw last year, seeing that group struggle, I think it is clear how important having an elite O-line is in Lincoln Riley's system. Now you can get by, right, with an O-line that is good across the board. The important part, in my opinion, is that you don't have glaring weaknesses, Teddy, because you know as well as anyone, if you have a weak link in the chain, defenses will expose that guy. So that all being said, we were hoping that this group would start finding their best combination of 5 in the spring, right? That's what the goal always is in spring ball. Well, injuries have made that very difficult for Bill Bedenbaugh to do this spring. They've had all kinds of guys miss practices. You know, some guys have missed extended time. Some guys, it's just a practice here or there. So they haven't been able to find that consistency, and they haven't been able to consistently look at certain combinations of guys along the offensive line. That is not ideal. And I know that may worry some OU fans after what we saw from this group last season.
Let me ask you this first of all, before we really dive into this current group. And we've hit this for different times before, but just to kind of refresh, why do you think last year's group struggled? If you can pinpoint maybe 1 or 2 reasons why they struggled and kind of why we feel like this year it could be better, or it may be more of the same, or it may be worse.
I think part of it had to do with the lack of a normal offseason, right? Mm-hmm. I think that those guys, a few of them, were a little out of shape, and it's hard to get in shape during the season, right?
We talked nationally, we felt like offensive line struggled across the country because of that.
It is a position that depends so much on getting reps together. So when you miss out on a full spring ball in training camp, it's all disjointed and weird. It makes it difficult. Also, remember, all of these teams with the mystery that kind of still surrounded the coronavirus, right? They're avoiding contact a lot. It's
They
hard to
weren't
get
working
better.
good on good, because
Yeah.
they didn't want contact tracing issues.
It's hard to get better at offensive line when you're not hitting people and blocking people. And it's hard to get better when you're not blocking good people,
Yeah.
right? So I think that stunted their growth, stunted their improvement. I also think that last year's line it didn't have the level of talent, right? That let's say the 2018 line had. Now, Creed Humphrey is a stud, right? There's no doubt about it. But when you think about a guy like Adrian Ely, he's a solid right tackle, right? He's a guy that is going to be a late round draft pick, maybe go undrafted. Well, Orlando Brown was way better than that, right? So it's like you have to look at the talent, kind of the circumstances, and then those guys, some of them being out of shape, maybe not playing up to their ability. I don't think there were a lot of mental errors or anything like that. I just think that they just were never able to put it all together, right? It was weird. It was weird to watch.
Yeah, no, it was. We've had a lot of offensive lines whenever they've had to replace guys start off slow and by the end of the year finish really strong and have an outstanding group. And expected last year's group to struggle early, but just kept kind of waiting around for them to really hit their full stride. And they did get better, but don't feel like they got to the place where we're used to seeing Oklahoma's offensive lines.
Yeah. A lot of other factors too, right? A lot of stuff off the field that was weighing on guys. I know that Creed kind of felt the weight of the leadership role there, and maybe that affected his play a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because they certainly need to play at a higher level. And okay, I'm going to preface this talk about the offensive line by saying this. I want to make it clear. They feel good about the pieces. They feel good about the options. They do, but I don't know if they've quite put the puzzle together yet. That's the best way to put it. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, Ted?
Yeah, I I'm picking it up loud and clear. I hear you. They've got good players there. They've got good talent there. They like the guys in the room. We just got to figure out who's playing what and where and what that combination is going to look like. And we got time, but it's the clock's always ticking, Gabe.
It is always ticking. Okay, let's start with a guy that I think is playing well, and that's Marquis Hayes. I've been told that out of all the positions on the offensive line, it seems like Marquis at left guard is the closest thing to a lock, right? They feel that he has gotten even better. Clearly, he's a big, physical guy, plays exactly the way Bill Bedenbaugh wants guys to play, experienced, has played a lot of football for this team. So that's encouraging, right? That Marquise was a guy that maybe could have gone to the draft. I thought it was a really, really good decision to come back. He's everything you want in an offensive guard, just an absolute mauler. And it sounds like he's got left guard locked down, Teddy. So that's a positive. That's where we start with the positive news.
You got to have the anchor somewhere, and this year our anchor is left guard Marquis Hayes. Love what he brings. He's kind of he's the guy like Cody Ford was, and like maybe Orlando Brown was before that. Just the physical beast that plays with that attitude and that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. So it gets a little more complicated from there. So let's talk about the most important position, and that, of course, is center. Now, it sounds like a joke, but in all seriousness, I think what happens at center will determine how the rest of this offensive line ends up looking. So the general consensus is that they still have to figure the center position out. Like, it's an issue. It is an issue. They knew there was going to be a drop off when Creed left, but from what they've seen so far, it sounds like it's a little more significant of a drop off than they were anticipating. So let's start with Chris Murray. He's getting every chance to win the job. He's missed some practice, but from everything I've heard, his issues at center have nothing to do with the physical aspects of playing the position. He's more than capable in the run game. He's more than capable in pass protection. The part where he has really struggled at times this spring is the mental aspect of things, recognizing what the defense is doing, setting protections, calling out the combinations in the run game. There is a lot of things on the center's plate there in Lincoln Riley's offense. And Bill Beanbo, he has always put a lot on the center ever since he got there when I was the center, and then it was Darlington, and then it was Wren, and then it was Creed. He has made sure his centers had to do a lot of things when it comes to dictating things at the line of scrimmage. And for whatever reason, and he's done it before, right? Because I was hearing positive things about him at the center position before. For whatever reason, for Chris Murray right now, the mental aspect of things is a bit of a struggle. It's not quite clicking the way you would hope it would. And that is not where you want to be with Bill Beanbo, because if you make mental errors, that is the quickest way to find yourself on the sideline with that man.
Well, and it should be that way. If you like all of the pieces on your offensive line and you're just trying to figure out where they go, well, if you can't have them consistently blocking, set to block the proper people, it throws a wrench in everything. Just not to get too in depth, but kind of take everyone inside what exactly that means. Recognizing the front, calling out the front. So, for instance, if you're just running a typical running play to the right side, off tackle to the right, the blocking combinations are different depending on what the defense is in and some of the blitzes. So just like quickly take people through like what on a typical couple of plays, what the center does as far as setting protection, setting combination blocks, IDing the front.
Yeah, so everything works inside to out, usually. Now, there's some exceptions, but so in the run game, your combinations, you memorize rules. And, if you get a 3-man front, these are the rules. If you get a 4-man front, these are the rules. If you get a bear front or jam front, a 5-man front, whatever you want to call it, these are the rules. The rules change depending on what the front is. So you have to know what the front is. And one of the reasons I could see a center struggling in spring ball going against
stuff.
OU's defense, a lot of shit changes quickly, right? With all the stemming, with all the slanting, the movement.
And so a lot of it's fake. Like,
exactly.
They stem, but they just slant back to where they started from, and it's just to mess with the offensive line. And I guess unfortunately, they're messing with their own guys right now.
Yes, that's what it sounds like. But so you have to be able to diagnose the front, communicate that to the entire offensive line and the backs and the tight ends, everybody. You have to all be on the same page. And then you have to relay your combination. Now you're identifying the Mike linebacker and all of that. And in some schemes, a certain combination is working to the Mike. In some schemes, a certain combination is working to the Will. In some schemes, a certain combination is working to the Sam. Like, there's all these rules, and it all depends on the center's communication of the front and the blocking combinations in the run game. And then if the front changes, if the look changes, you have to communicate the changes
or your
quickly.
call changes from the sideline,
Right.
like your play.
And it also happens. One thing that is very helpful is having experienced guys around you that have played a lot of football where maybe you don't have to verbalize everything. They know if the picture changes, hey, this is what changes. So when it comes to pass protection, Bill still has the center ID the Mike linebacker. He sets the protection. He has to communicate all of the protection changes throughout the entire offensive line. Now, the quarterback can confirm some things, stuff like that, but it's still a very center dependent protection scheme. But once again, you are doing one thing. And if they go from a 4-man front to a 3-man front, the protection scheme changes, right? All of a sudden, if they hop in a 3-man front, you're sorting one side, you're big on one side, you're getting back, you're getting off the ball. Now, if they're in a 4-man front, you could be in a slide protection where you're sending the 3-man wall to one side's big on big. Like, with the defense just shifting barely, the rules completely change. So that's where it can get complicated, right? All of a sudden you're going 4 down to the mic and you're no longer going 4 down on the mic. You're sorting, you're trying to sift things out. Like, so it's more, I guess the bottom line is it's more complicated than people think it is.
And then you got to get the snap to the quarterback. Let's not forget about that one.
Snapping the ball. Yes. You have to process all of that while hearing the quarterback. And I guess they clap now. So when I was playing center, I got to call the snap count. So I didn't have to worry about it.
Right.
So they put
it's
that
hard
on
to mess
me,
it up when you call it, which it's still possible. But
I loved it. I loved it.
Here's the good news about that, though. We've talked about how good we think our defensive line is going to be. And whenever you factor in our talent, our athleticism, how good that group is playing with how difficult they make it with the stemming, slanting, running the different games, it's always going to be easier than it is right now. So if you can get it down now and in training camp, whenever you're going good on good, it's going to slow way down after that once you start getting into some game prep stuff.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope
so. So with Chris Murray's struggles at times at center this week, they actually are, they're trying Andrew Raym, right? They let him dip his toe in the water last week a little bit at center, and they are intrigued by what they've seen. Now, think that could be a good fit, certainly could be a good option. Doesn't hurt at all to get him reps at that position, especially with the first team. But that transition, it takes a little time. Like you said, Teddy, it's a different world snapping to a quarterback on air as opposed to snapping and playing in 11-on-11 periods during spring practice. Like,
with the slanting 300-pounder on top of you,
it gets a little more complicated, and it's a skill that you have to acquire. Once again, snapping the ball, not as easy as it looks when you're processing all of the things mentally, communicating everything, and also having to pay attention to when you have to snap the ball. And, oh yeah, you're kind of worried about blocking the creature in front of you. So there's a lot going on, but it does sound like Andrew Raym could be a good option there at the center position, but they got to get center figured out. I mean, I've heard that from multiple people that's the big issue right now. Now, Ian McIver is a guy that Bill Bedenbaugh trusts. He just doesn't have the physical gifts that some of the other guys have, but they would not hesitate throwing him out there if these other guys just can't figure it out. I think he brings a lot of value to the offensive line because he kind of reminds me of an NFL guy, like down the roster a little bit. You can have him like a swing guy for the interior 3. Like, you don't necessarily want him to play, but if you're in a pickle, someone goes down, you can throw him out there and feel absolutely fine about him playing either guard position or the center position.
Yeah, and that's critical because even if they do get their lineup set things come up, man. A guy rolls an ankle, whatever it is, misses a half of a game or 2 weeks. You've got to have capable guys that know everything, can step in without having to have a really long learning process. And there's fall off, but there's not such a massive amount of fall off that it sinks your offense. So guys like that are critical. Totally critical. I mean, talk about the same thing at like the linebacker position. You've got to have guys that can play multiple positions, and maybe your starting Mike backer's down. The will needs to slide over because your backup will's maybe a little bit better than your backup Mike. You just got to have versatility down the roster a little bit, and that helps a lot.
Yeah. So now that we've scared everyone about the center position, let's talk about offensive tackle. So Wanya Morris comes in. Certainly a lot of excitement about him being there, and he misses a bunch of practice to start off spring ball, like quite a bit. So once he finally got on the field, he struggled, which of course isn't that surprising. New system and missed time, hadn't been able to get reps, got some new techniques he's learning under Bill Bedenbaugh. But good news, it sounds like in the last week or so, he's starting to get it, Ted. Like it is starting to come together for the young man. And that is encouraging because they need him to be one of the starting tackles. When you look at the talent he's got, and they're relatively thin at the tackle position, he needs to be good, man. I mean, this kid, he needs to live up to the hype. He needs to be a player for this O line, and it sounds like settling in a little bit. So that's encouraging.
Well, we know he's got the athleticism to be able to do all the things that are being asked of him, right? So it's not about being limited physically, at least from what I heard whenever he was coming in. So yeah, if whenever you miss time in a spring, whenever you're not an established guy, you don't know the system, you don't have all the techniques and different things that you have to do locked down, that time is gold because now you're coming in after all the new guys and even the guys that are there have sharpened up from having time off. They've been out there on the field for what 8, 10 practices, so everyone's really starting to hit their stride as settling into playing in pads again. And then here you come playing against everyone that's at maybe their best that they're going to be in the spring. You're just showing up. You're still learning the system. You can watch it on film all day long, but until you get out there and learn the muscle memory of the protections, of the blocking schemes, of the combos, get to know the guys that you're comboing with and blocking with. I mean, Gabe, I've heard you say it before. You may play with one guard that likes to combo one way compared to another guy that likes it a little bit different. So you got to get to know your teammates there on the offensive line. So that's a big setback. So it's good to hear that he's starting to get back up to speed, but we are running thin on time in spring practice.
Right. And once again, you're trying to learn a new system. You're trying to process all the rules. And that defense, man, everything is changing in front of your eyes right before the snap, and you've got to be on it. So when you hesitate, it's hard to play well. I mean, it really is. If you're trying to process things and it's not like a seamless transition for you from going one rule to the next when things change, you can look really bad. You can look really bad at times. Now, the right tackle position, this sounds interesting because the hope was that Anton Harrison would be a guy that made a big jump this spring, right? And this is another guy that has missed some spring practice. Now, it sounds like there's some progress, but they really need this kid to make a big jump, right? If they want this offensive line to be as talented as it can be, they need Anton Harrison to figure some things out because you can play some other guys there at right tackle, right? You can, but they don't have the natural gifts that Anton Harrison has got. He's got to focus in on learning everything he's supposed to do, on utilizing the techniques, doing things the way that Bill wants him to do it. And he's got to make that jump, because if he can put it all together, he can be a player. Now, I mean, we saw moments last year when he was at left tackle. Like, he can do some really nice things. It's just one of those things where, he's made a little progress in spring, but had to miss some time. And now you feel like maybe he hasn't progressed the way you were hoping he would in spring ball.
Well, I don't know how you feel, but the the guys being a little banged up and missing time in the spring, that worries me, because I always feel like if you're missing in the spring and you're beat up and you've got to sit out, that doesn't usually seem like it's a problem that goes away. Like, as you acquire more things, more injuries, more scar tissue, the body is broken down more. It's and this isn't guaranteed, but it usually happens more as you go on, not less as you go on. So it's a little bit worrying to see so many guys having to miss time throughout the spring, whenever what you practice 3 times during the week and then maybe once on the weekend, compared to a season where it's every single day plus a game. I mean, this should be the time where you're feeling your absolute best, and you walk out on the practice field every day feeling totally fresh, totally 100% and able to really attack it. So it's kind of troubling.
Okay, so let's get to the position that is most up in the air, Teddy, and that is right guard, right? Because it's most up in the air because it is going to be affected by what happens at center and by what happens at the tackle positions. So you look at tackle, I guess you got to look at tackle a little more. Eric Swinson, the elder statesman, still there, ladies and gentlemen. I have been told that he was actually playing really well at multiple spots, that he was putting together a good spring, uh, was challenging for a starting spot, was playing with more consistency than some of the guys that are more talented than he is. But then last week, he gets hurt and is likely done for the spring. I feel like Eric Swinson cannot buy a damn break. I mean, it's always something. And it's just, I mean, we'll never know what he could have been, because the guy, he's been, I don't know, how many limbs has he hurt in his career at OU? It just
All of
sounds like
them,
another bad break for him.
all of them. I'm, you had talked about, I think, him moving down to guard for quite a while, right? That maybe that would just be a better spot for him than being out there on the edge. He's got some good size to him, some good power. So that's a good move. If there's Swinson's one of the guys that I'm actually not worried about injury wise, because I know he's going to be hurt during the season and I know he's going to play through it. So, I mean, that's just what it's going to be. Okay.
He's just going to be miserable and
Yeah.
play through all the pain. That's what our man Swinson does. Okay, so the right guard spot. You've got the Rame situation now that has developed at center. So that affects things clearly. Now, Tyrese Robinson is the returning starter. He has slimmed down, looked better, been playing guard. They've been working him at right tackle in case of some of the other guys can't figure things out. But then he has to have surgery. So another guy banged up. So the offensive line looks a lot different when they're healthy and they've got all the pieces to choose from and they can try the different combinations. But once again, it has been it's been an issue. They haven't been able to do that. So if Anton Harrison and Ronnie Morris can't figure things out at tackle, then Bray Walker comes into the picture as a guy that could maybe factor in at right guard. So right guard is dependent on if Wanye Morris and Anton Harrison can figure things out and play well. because then that would allow Tyrese Robinson to probably play right guard. But then if Chris Murray can figure things out at center, then maybe Andrew Rame is your right guard, and it becomes a competition between Robinson and Rame for that position. If other guys can't figure it out, then maybe Tyrese Robinson is your right tackle. And that possibly brings Bray Walker in at right guard because maybe Rame is playing center for you. There's some moving parts going on here. I'm just saying, like, it's an interesting situation right now.
It's Bill Bedenbaugh. It's his version of a Rubik's Cube right now.
That's so good.
Trying to figure out what's going on. He's like tinkering. Yeah, it's fascinating, and health is always a factor, man. And it's frustrating, and it's causing you to have to maybe find some avenues that you didn't want to go down, but it's preparing you for the season, because at least maybe it's happening now and you're getting a chance to move some of these guys around, as opposed to happening, week 5 or week 6, and now you've got to do it on the fly in the season. So I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a blessing in disguise to get guys acclimated at some different spots that they may not end up starting there whenever the season gets underway. You may have your group, but if stuff happens, then you do have some stuff from the spring to be able to fall back on. That's my rosy picture of it anyways.
Once again, and I know that probably hasn't been the most encouraging breakdown of the current offensive line situation, they do feel good about the pieces. Just right now, the puzzle, maybe not fitting together the way that they would want to, but we remain optimistic. I'm sure some people just listen to this and like, what? What are you talking
about? We're going to be terrible.
And in all seriousness, at the end of the day, Bill Bedenbaugh is the best doing it. He will find a combination where they can win a lot of games. He will. Now, he may have to try a few more combinations than he was hoping he'd have to try, but ultimately, that's what it comes down to with the offensive line at Oklahoma for me. I trust Bill Bedenbaugh to figure it out. So remain optimistic, people. It's a long way till the first kickoff, guys. Long way.
It is a long way, and maybe it's way too early to ask this question. But as of right now, the way you see it right now, whenever you forecast it for the fall, do you feel like this group, if they get set, if they know their positions, do you feel like this group can be better than last year, as good as last year, not quite as good as last year? How do you forecast it way too early in April?
I think that it would be a similar level as last year. Similar level. I think that is my current expectation. From what I've been told, I can't in good faith go, no. They're going to be way better than last year's line. I mean, they're losing possibly a first round pick at center, a right tackle that, played a lot of games for Oklahoma. So I think the one thing that is encouraging is this line is getting these spring reps, right? And they're going to have, from all indications, a normal summer. They're going to have a normal training camp. So the improvement from where they started in March to where they're going to be when we kick things off against Tulane, I do think that they're going to improve a lot, because Bill is great at continually improving his guys. So I remain optimistic, but I think it would be a similar level as last year.
Yeah, and I think, part of it also last year, maybe a small part of it, but I think the defenses in the Big 12 have gotten way better, and next year is going to be no different. Iowa State, Baylor's defense, Texas with Kwiatkowski coming from Washington, I think they're going to be pretty salty. So TCU is going to have a good defense, so it's going to be a challenge.
You mean that some people may need to get used to our quarterbacks not being able to sit back there for 8 seconds and go through all their reads?
Oh yeah, that some of the
Kyler
stuff
Murray.
that Baker and Kyler got to do back there, just not normal.
Yeah, good reminder. That's usually not how it works. Okay, let's get to our interview with Dane Brugler. But first, First Fidelity Bank is a full-service financial institution based in Oklahoma. I've done that a couple times. That's not a place. Based in Oklahoma with tailored solutions for all your personal and business needs, checking accounts, saving accounts, home loans, and much more. They do it all. Whether it's online banking from your computer or mobile banking from your phone, everything is stress-free with FFB. Making mobile deposits, paying bills online, and moving money to different accounts could not be easier. First Fidelity Bank also provides free ATMs worldwide, making banking convenient wherever you are. They also give back to the community. FFB donates a total of more than $500,000 to local charities and educational foundations. Make your life easier and go bank at First Fidelity Bank. Visit ffb.com for more information. And guys, spring is here, and you know what that means. It is hard seltzer season, baby. And there's only one hard seltzer that we drink on this podcast, and that is Will and Wiley Hard Seltzer from Coupe Ale Works. It's perfect for any occasion. We drink it by the pool, at the lake, and at the tailgate. Maybe at some T-ball games every once in a while there, Ted.
Yes. Maybe in a Gatorade squirt bottle, just to hide it a little bit. But yes, definitely at T-ball.
It's made in Oklahoma, and it is absolutely delicious. Will and Wiley is customized for the Oklahoma lifestyle. Go find it right now in a store near you, and go follow them on social media at Will and Wiley. Okay, here is Dane Brugler. It is our pleasure to be joined by the author of The Beast. Yes, The Beast. He is the NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. Dane Brugler is in the house. What's going on, Dane?
I appreciate you boys having me on. It's a fun time. We're 2 weeks away from the draft. It feels like you can't get here soon enough, but at the same time, plenty to talk about, plenty to still to figure out with this draft. So my pleasure being on with you guys.
Dane, your draft guide is truly unbelievable. It is a ridiculously informative draft guide, but I wanted to start with the OU guys with you. And I knew you were a smart guy already, but you've got Creed Humphrey as your top rated center. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I think Creed Humphrey is going to be a better pro than he was a college player, because I think he was in a bit of a limited system from what he was doing there at Oklahoma. Do you think he is a guy that is going to go, early day 2 and be able to step in as a starter immediately?
I think the only disagreement I would have there is maybe he goes round 1. I mean, I think he really could, because if you're, we talk so much about rounds and where these guys are drafted and value and all that. But at the end of the day, it's just, what are you bringing to my football team? And it doesn't matter if you're a second rounder, third rounder. Are you going to be an impact starter? And for a team that is looking for that impact starter at center, Creed Humphrey's it. And, I'm a big fan of Landon Dickerson as well. I actually graded him higher as guard. Just, some of the height issues, you just don't see that very often. Although with, Landon Dickerson, he's so good, he could probably overcome that. But with Creed Humphrey, I think he's the top center. And I think you look at the Jaguars picking there at the late end or the end of the first round. You're getting Trevor Lawrence early, get him as his center at pick 25. I think that's a possibility. In my 7-round mock on The Athletic today, I had the Eagles drafting Creed Humphrey in the early portion of the second round. So I think there's going to be several teams that are going to have their eye on Humphrey as a guy they could bring in from day 1 to be the guy. You love the resume, 37 starts. From the day he first started, he was just seemed like he was an All-American. He was part of that really experienced offensive line Oklahoma had in 2018. And then, he was kind of the leader from there on out, bringing along some of these young guys. You love the toughness. You love guys you could just tell were former wrestlers in high school. He's one of those guys. Not many lefty snappers, but he's one of them. And, you know, you love the technique, the reaction quickness. So big fan of Creed Humphrey and what he's going to bring to an NFL squad.
You know, we often talk about offensive line coach at Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh, and the track record that he's got recently of putting guys into the NFL. And when you see so many of those guys starting, playing well in the league, it seems like the reputation of offensive linemen coming out of Oklahoma would be pretty good. Is that what you hear whenever you talk to NFL guys?
Yeah, no question. Because you understand how they're coached, you understand what they're being taught. And I think it gives them a little bit of a leg up. And so you have a ton of respect for the coaching staff there. And it shows on Sundays, exactly what you're talking about. So, and I think that, you know, you learn which coaches, really tell you the truth and which ones are kind of, you know, they're just going to say positive things about all the players. Then you realize some of these guys can't play. I've got a lot of respect to that, you know, in my interactions with the Oklahoma coaching staff, they've been pretty upfront with me, off the record or on the record, and everything on the record and off the record about Creed Humphrey has been just glowing with the way he carries himself, the competitive toughness. And so, you know, a guy like that who plays through injuries, he's so uniquely powerful. And the way he's been coached, the way he's been, you know, developed and brought through. I think maybe the only worry is, you know, maybe you worry about, you know, some bad habits from that offense, but he's such a coachable player that I don't think it's necessarily something you worry about. So, you know, he's a guy that you're going to bring in from day one, and he's going to compete for your starting center job, and you're not have to worry about that position for a long time.
You've got a 2nd to 3rd round grade on Ronnie Perkins, and then he's got impressive tape, right? Didn't have a ton of it, missing the 6 games last year, but is the thing that's kind of holding him back is the fact that it's kind of hard to project what position he'll play in the NFL. And I guess he also lacks elite measurables, right?
Right. 6'2.5", 253 pounds, adequate length, just under 33-inch arms. The testing data was good, not great. 4.7 in the 40, 32-inch vert, 169 in a 10-yard split. You know, you want a little bit better than that in terms of that first step, get off, that explosion. But on tape, he's a good player. I love how heavy his hands are. He looks to get his hands on tackles really quickly and then dictate the action. I thought that he took advantage of that system a little bit. It's just the way they slant their defensive linemen. I think that inflated his production just a little bit because in 6 games, he had 10.5 sacks. So he was a guy frequently in the backfield. Obviously being suspended for 6 games, that's something that teams will just have to be comfortable with. But the coaches talk really highly about him. They call him a leader. They say how different it was when he was back in the lineup for that defense and just what he meant for that team. So he's a guy that looks comfortable on his feet. He can drop a little bit. He can shut down the run. And so I think somewhere top 75 is where we're going to see Ronnie Perkins off the board. I think 2nd round is a very good chance to go in the 2nd round. If not, early 3rd round seems like kind of the ceiling of where he'll be drafted.
What, Gabe mentioned he's kind of in between positions. Where do you think he's going to play in the NFL? It's weird because we've never seen him as a stand-up edge guy, right, but that's kind of what his frame is in the NFL. But his tape shows that he's a hand down guy. So like, where do you think we end up seeing him, and what style of play?
I think that he is. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be able to stand up consistently. I don't know that he has that type of range as a player, but he can do it. And, if you want him dropping, spot dropping and zone dropping here and there, I think he could do that. But for the most part, he's a physical guy. And I think that's how you want to be using him. The stick, the stab, all these different ways that he can attack blockers and just keep blockers on their toes. I think that's how you're going to use him. I don't know that he's ever going to be necessarily a double-digit sack guy in the NFL. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be his game. but I think that you trust him versus the run, the way he can set an edge. He's not going to be a guy that lets you down in that area. So I think he has the makings of just a quality hand the ground starter for a lot of years.
Looking at Rhamondre Stevenson, you have him as your 7th ranked running back. You've got a 4th round projection or grade on him. How do you think his ability translates to the NFL? Because, right, not the fastest guy in the world, but he seems like he can be a reliable back on the next level.
Yeah, and he's, for a guy that's 230 pounds, he moves pretty quick. Like you said, he's not the fastest guy. He's not going to win many races out there, but he moves like a much smaller player with that short area quickness. He's able to get to his top speed quickly. His top speed's not great, but he can get to it quickly. And so that acceleration really helps him get downhill in a hurry. And then for a guy that size, he can bounce off tacklers, and it's just a really unique type of player. And I think one of my favorite parts about doing this is learning about the journeys of all these guys, because no two journeys are alike. The where they came from, the different adverse situations they faced along the way. No two situation or story is the same, and so I think it really helps us tell us where they're headed by understanding where they're from. And a guy like Rhamondre Stevenson, being out of football, out of high school, and then going the JUCO route, and then going to Oklahoma, where he was a backup that first year in 2019, and then had the suspension, and then he finally is the guy as a senior in 2020. And he was, you just love the production. He was averaging almost 7 yards a carry. You really liked what he could do at the backfield as a pass catcher. He had 18 catches this past year. So not a guy that's necessarily, explosive and shifty, but there's just very little wasted motion in his cuts because he's such a quick runner for a big man like that. So, you worry a little bit about the inconsistent past, bouncing around from JUCO and then the suspension in Oklahoma. But if he's a guy that stays focused and stays, learns how to be a professional, he's built for the pro game. And I think he's going to be a guy that can help a backfield.
This is more of a question kind of for you personally, because just thinking about that running back spot, I think over the last decade, it's probably changed as far as draft value more than any other spot. I mean, it wasn't very long ago we'd see 2, 3, 4 guys in the first round at running back. Now, maybe one if it's a guy that can do everything. So what's changed with the NFL as far as what they're looking for coming out of college for these running backs, and what they value, and why they've kind of slid down the pecking order a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it varies from team to team. You have a team like the Giants who, took Saquon Barkley in the top 3 picks. Meanwhile, there are some other teams that wouldn't even consider a running back in the first round. And I think it depends on the makeup of your roster and where are you in terms of your team needs. And you look at the Steelers, for example. They have a small window here with Ben as their quarterback, and to go for it. So at pick 24, Najee Harris makes all the sense in the world, because again, who's going to make the biggest impact for you in 2021 right away? You could argue that's Najee Harris and what he brings to your offense, not only as a runner, but as a pass catcher and a blocker. So I think that makes a ton of sense. But for another team, it might not make as much sense because they're not a running back away. Maybe they need to get better on the offensive line, and it makes more sense for them to invest in a left tackle in the first round. So I really think it just depends on your situation, what your roster makeup looks like. And I think the running back gets dinged a little bit, and I can understand not paying a running back that second contract. That's a lot of money. I understand that point of it. But if you find a difference maker, at least for your team in the draft, I don't think that there's such a thing as drafting him too early if he's going to be a difference maker for your roster.
Quick break. Do you own a business? If you do, you need Insurica in your life. Insurica is one of the country's largest insurance brokers with 30 offices throughout Oklahoma, Texas, and the Southwest. Insurica is able to customize programs by accessing the latest information from many insurance carriers. They compare and contrast coverage offerings and pricing in order to design a cost-effective, comprehensive program to meet your business's specific needs. Insurica's clients become best-in-class businesses by working with Insurica's team of advisors to manage risk. Purchasing insurance is only one way to protect your business. Best-in-class businesses win by avoiding a loss in the first place. If your business partners with Insurica, you'll save huge amounts of money and take back control of your total cost of risk. I'm an Insurica client, and you should be too. If your business wants to be best in class, connect with Insurica at insurica.com. That's INSURICA.com. And make sure you connect with our friends at Advanced Weight Loss Clinic of Sand Springs. They'll help you execute a realistic and achievable weight loss plan designed for you and only you. They've got all kinds of treatments for men and women. Their licensed and trained experts combine diet and exercise with hormone therapies to maximize your results. If you're struggling with low libido or low energy, Advanced Weight Loss Clinic of Sand Springs can help with that too. They also offer Botox and fillers. To get on the path to losing weight, call 918-241-LOSE or visit their Facebook page. If you mention the podcast, you will get a free fat burner injection. All right, back to the interview. You've got a 4th round grade on Trey Brown, and there's no doubt he's got the speed, right? But he's not the ideal size. Now, it seemed like he had a decent week there playing the nickel at the Senior Bowl and did some good things. But how do you kind of view Trey Brown, and where do you think he fits in an NFL defense?
I think he's that ideal nickel that you're looking for because he is tough. And it was fun watching him Senior Bowl week. I was in the stands maybe 15 feet from him, and he did not back down from anybody. And it was a lot of fun to watch him go out there and compete. There were a few times where the lack of inches showed, but more times than not, he came out from the battle as a winner. So, and then you watch the tape and you see a lot of the same things. A really outstanding athlete, ran a 4.40 in the 40-yard dash at the pro day, 38-inch vert. And then, you go and you look more and more and you see him make some big time plays in the biggest moments. The 3 Big 12 championship games, the last 3 years, sack safety in 2018. He had that big touchdown preventing play in 2019 against Baylor. And then he had the interception this past year that sealed it against Iowa State. So he's a guy that just has been making plays, and the size isn't ideal, but if early day 3, I'm looking for that nickel, that feisty corner who has athleticism, who has compete skills, the physicality that he plays with. I love how he plays through the hands of receivers. So even when, he might give up the catch point, he doesn't quit ball searching. He's always looking to get it out. And so the athleticism helps cover up some of the lack of size with him. I love the aggressive play with Trey Brown. So somewhere, I think early on day 3, a team looking for that nickel corner, I think they're going to be looking at Trey Brown as being a viable option for them.
If all of these guys, these OU guys, end up falling within your window, who do you think is the best value play? Is it Creed Humphrey right there, maybe the end of the 1st round, early 2nd? Is it a Rhamondre in the 4th round? Who do you think, if they fall in the slot that you predict, is the best value for an NFL team?
You could make an argument really for all these guys. I mean, because Creed Humphrey, again, we spend so much time talking about rounds, but if he comes in and he's a lockdown center for you from day 1 and you get him at pick 36, I mean, that's a tremendous value and what he would mean to your offense. So Creed Humphrey certainly qualifies. Like a Ronnie Perkins. This is a really interesting pass rush class. We don't have that Chase Young this year. We don't have the Bosa brothers. We don't have Myles Garrett. We don't have that top 10 pass rusher, but there's just a logjam of talented yet flawed pass rushers in that 20 to 75 range. There's a lot of these guys. Whether you're talking about a Jason Oweh from Penn State, who's the freakiest of the freaks when you talk about athleticism, but 0 sacks last year, and different teams.
How does that happen? He ran like a 4.3 and had 0 sacks.
To fall into a couple of them.
Well, and honestly, I mean, you watch the Indiana tape and you see the guy. He is disrupting the backfield, and I think it's it's very strange that he didn't have any sacks because he was disruptive. He had a ton of hits on the quarterback. He just didn't get home quick enough. And I think when you factor in, he was a big basketball player. He never played football until his junior year of high school. He's still learning how to, patch moves together and set up blockers. Some scouts say that, he just doesn't have the instincts, and that's not something that's easily coachable with him. Others say he's going to get there. So, but that to my point, these pass rushers, they're all kind of flawed. And so for like a Ronnie Perkins, if he's available at pick 72, I love that value there for him. If he might get, pushed down a little bit. So, I think Creed Humphrey and Ronnie Perkins, those two guys could, if they end up going, in the early 30s, early 70s for Perkins, that would be awesome value for that team.
Okay, let's look at some of the big storylines of the draft. And it seems like the biggest debate is who is QB3, because Trevor Lawrence has already got the Jags playbook. Like, that's a done deal. Sounds like Zach Wilson's going to be headed to New York at number 2. Who do you like as the next QB, Dane? Are you a Lance guy, Fields guy, Mac Jones guy? Who do you like?
If I were picking third, personally, I would go Lance. I think when you look at how much ability he has, both physically and mentally, this is the type of guy I want to work with. And, the ceiling is so high for him. And it's just, I was talking about, background and just learning about these guys and how fascinating it is. With Trey Lance, he wasn't one of these guys that grew up with a quarterback guru teaching him how to do every little thing. He played safety as a senior in high school. I mean, how many quarterbacks are doing that? And it's not because, he wasn't viewed as a top recruit. Minnesota, which was in his, close by, he grew up in a small town in Minnesota. The Gophers were trying to recruit him as a safety. They didn't think he could play quarterback. And so he just went overlooked, goes to North Dakota State. And credit to North Dakota State, because they put a lot on his plate. You talk about what they asked him to do during the week in terms of understanding protections, understanding the defense, digesting the game plan. They put a lot on his plate to get ready for the opponent. And he's the type of guy that if I'm going to bet on one of these guys, I think it'd be him. But I don't want to, make it sound like I don't like the other guys, because I do. I mean, we're talking about, these guys are ice cream flavors. They're all really good. It just comes down to preference and what you're looking for. And so, Justin Fields, I would love to add him to my team if I needed a quarterback. There's so much talent, so much ability there. And then Mac Jones, I think, a lot of 49er fans aren't very thrilled with the chance of Mac Jones being a 49er at number 3. But really, when you look at it, okay, what are the two most important traits at the quarterback position? It's accuracy and decision-making, right? You could argue Mac Jones is above the rest in those two areas. You just have to decide, okay, is he good enough in those other areas? Talking about mobility and arm strength and, just all the other variables that it takes to play the quarterback position at a high level. So Mac Jones, I understand why, he's kind of viewed as just this unimpressive physical talent. But when you really factor in his anticipation, he always knows where to go with the football. And I think he has enough functional mobility because he understands where the rush is coming from, and he can slide in the pocket and buy those extra half seconds. That matters. And so I think all those reasons are why he is absolutely in the conversation to be that pick at number 3.
Are you sold on Wilson at 2? Because I got to tell you, and hey, I'm wrong all the time, but I don't see it. I don't see it at all.
What don't you see?
Well, I'll tell you, number 1, he's going to the Jets. All right. And
fair.
I say if you line up Darnold and you line up Zach Wilson whenever they're both coming out, I don't think there's any doubt that everyone would say, well, we're going with Sam Darnold. And, that doesn't always match up. But I don't the teams that he played, the competition he was against, I think there's way more hype than substance there.
I mean, you're talking speaking a lot of truths there. I mean, there's nothing we can do about the competition level that he faced. It is what it is. And I think that based off of when Darnold was coming out and when Wilson's coming out, I think that's fair as well, saying that Darnold was probably the higher ranked prospect. But I think from the Jets perspective, I just think he's damaged goods at this point, at least in New York. I think a fresh start was exactly what both sides needed. And it's hard because we're not in the meeting rooms and understanding, how the last 3 years went. A new coaching staff, Joe Douglas has been
he should be happy that where he went.
Sure,
he's
absolutely
got the greatest deal ever. That's one of the best places he could have gone.
And you look at the Jets with the new coaching staff. I like Joe Douglas a lot. He's now, this will be a second draft as the general manager. I think that he knows what he's doing. I think just based off of the small sample size we have, if ownership can kind of stay out of the way, I think the Jets have the pieces in place, coaching and GM, where they can build this thing. And with Zach Wilson, again, can't do anything about the competition, but I think we could still grade him based off of the level of throws that he's making. Off platform, he is so instinctive. It makes it look really, really easy. I understand why some see the Aaron Rodgers flashes with just the way he can alter his arm angles and make plays. And really, to me, that's why I have, or the difference between a Zach Wilson and Justin Fields for me is, and this goes back to an old Bill Walsh thing, that when he talked about quarterbacks, he talked about Joe Montana, why, the difference between good and great at the position is the ability to make that great spontaneous decision. And that's what I see with Zach Wilson. He is able to make that quick twitch, spontaneous decision and be accurate with the football. Where with a guy like Justin Fields, who I like a lot, I love the talent, would love to work with him. He's a little more methodical in his process and, how he reads, how he delivers the football. He can speed that up a little bit in the NFL, and I think people need to. But with Zach Wilson, I've seen him do it. And so as long as you're comfortable with the person and just, how he retains information and, is able to implement the game plan, all those things that we don't necessarily always see on tape, as long as you're comfortable in those areas mentally, to me, he's the number 2 quarterback just because what he can do with his arm. He's a natural thrower of the football. And so but he's going to New York, and that's tough. It's not the easiest place to play. They did add Corey Davis, the wide receiver in free agency. You hope Denzel Mims in year 2 is ready to take off. They need to get better on the offensive line. That was probably the chief reason why Sam Darnold wasn't able to do more for that team. Mekhi Becton, I think, is going to be one of the better left tackles in the game, but they're not done. They need help on the interior. They need help at right tackle. So the Jets are set up in this draft. They have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. So, if they do take Zach Wilson, like we believe they will at number 2, it'll be interesting to see what they do at pick 23. And then the second pick in the second round, how are they going to help their quarterback to be able to succeed in a tough environment in the NFL as still just a young player? He's still just 21 years old.
This draft has some really good receivers. You look at Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Kadarius Toney, Jamar Chase, probably going to be the wide receiver that comes off the board first. But how crazy is it that Kyle Pitts is probably going to come off the board before all of those guys? I mean, a tight end, Dane. I mean, just how talented is this kid, and what does it say about how tight ends are valued now?
I don't know that it really. I don't know how much it says about tight ends. I just think it says what Kyle Pitts, how different he is, how special he is. You just don't want to be the GM that passed on special, and that's what I think Kyle Pitts is. This reminds me a lot of 2018 when Quentin Nelson was coming out, and it was okay. Yeah, he's really, really good, but he's a guard, but by the time we got to draft day, he's the top player on the board because you had to get there mentally, putting a guard as the number 1 player in the draft. It's the same thing with Kyle Pitts. We've known how good he is. It took a little bit of, mental hurdles to get there to say that Kyle Pitts is the best non-quarterback in the draft. And he is, because he's just so special, so different. 6'5.5", 245 pounds, 4.40 in the 40-yard dash. You kidding me? For a guy with an 83.5-inch wingspan, and just the raw numbers look great. But then you throw on the tape, it's even better. And it's not like he's just beating linebackers and safeties. He's beating corners in the SEC. Throw on the Kentucky tape, and he's blowing past Kelvin Joseph at Kentucky, a 4.3 athlete who has a chance to be a first-round pick in April or here in 2 weeks. So Kyle Pitts is just different. He's a unicorn. He's a cheat code, whatever way you want to describe him. And it's not just the athleticism; it's the ball skills. They're elite. The catch radius, his reflexes, his hand-eye coordination. So, and there's a lot of debate about, is he a receiver? Is he a tight end? I don't care. I mean, you look at a guy like Travis Kelce, 50-50, he's either in line or he's detached, running routes is basically their X receiver. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. I mean, I think it'll be 50-50. He can line up in line. He can execute basic blocks, but also put him in a slot, put him outside. You want him going down the field and making plays. So you look at this draft, okay, quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3. What do the Falcons do it for? They're going to have a tough decision here between we could get our quarterback for the future, our successor to Matt Ryan. We're probably going to get some trade action here. Broncos maybe, with the Patriots try to go up that far. So we have to listen to these trade offers, but you got Kyle Pitts sitting there right there in your laps. And, this is a chance to go for it. Matt Ryan's going to be your starter probably the next 2 years. Not quite the MVP Matt Ryan, but he's still probably a slightly above average quarterback in the league. You have a chance to go for it. And a guy like Kyle Pitts is going to help you right away. So that's an awfully appealing route to go if you're Atlanta.
Here's what I think's crazy about Pitts. He's lighter, shorter, and slower than Calvin Johnson. And Calvin Johnson ran his 4.3 at the combine in Indy, not at Pro Day on the hand timer. So that's just mind blowing. There's been already been a lot of movement with this draft. It seems like maybe this is becoming a little more common. And are we going to see between now and draft night, maybe even on draft night, are we going to continue to see teams jumping around and making trades?
I think so. I think we knew there was going to be a big trade coming before that San Francisco trade was official. We just weren't sure who. So San Francisco makes that big move. So we know 3 quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3. And then what happens with the other 2 quarterbacks? Are we going to see some movement? Like the Patriots to me are the most intriguing here. Because we don't know, how aggressive they're willing to be because Tom Brady was there the last 20 years. So they didn't have to worry about the quarterback position. So we just don't have, really a sample size of them going to get their quarterback. They've waited till the 2nd, 3rd round to get, your Jimmy Garoppolo's and, those types of quarterbacks. After what we saw from the Patriots last year, and mediocre quarterback play, mediocre offense, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Bill Belichick say, "Let's be aggressive." Justin Fields, he gets past, say, out of the top 6. Let's call the Lions at 7, and let's go get our quarterback. You look at Washington at 19. If one of these quarterbacks gets to a certain point, I think we'll see Washington try to make a move. Chicago, same type of deal. If one of these quarterbacks gets out of the top 7, 8 picks, that's where things get really interesting. And I was actually talking to a scout last week who told me, don't rule out Carolina either at number 8. Yes, they made the Sam Darnold trade, but this is an organization that's ready to throw a ton of darts at the position. And, they were willing to give up a ton for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, with that situation going south, they're going in a different direction. They went with Sam Darnold, and they could still use that number 8 pick on, say, a Justin Fields, and it's still less than what it would have cost them to go get Deshaun Watson. Except now you have 2 quarterbacks, maybe a better odds of figuring out who your guy could be. It's a really progressive, out of the box type of way of doing things. We just don't see teams be that aggressive at the quarterback position. But why not? It's about time someone tried it at least to see how it works out. It might backfire and blow up in their faces, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina went that route.
Quick break for Riverwind. Riverwind is Oklahoma City's premier casino experience. There are temperature screenings at all entrances, and masks are required for all patrons and employees because your safety is Riverwind's #1 priority. There are so many reasons why Riverwind is consistently voted OKC's #1 casino, but it all starts with their amazing variety of gaming thrills and excitement. Riverwind's beautiful, award-winning environment plays host to more than 2,800 of the latest electronic games, with a huge selection of table games, including blackjack, blackjack match, roulette, and craps. No matter what your game, Riverwind has it in spades and hearts. And Fridays in April from 6 p.m. to midnight, You can win your share of $100,000 in cash and bonus play in Riverwind's baskets and cash promotion. That's awesome. If you need help finding your way, just visit riverwind.com. Riverwind Casino, simply the one. And make sure you send your kids to Bishop McGinnis Catholic High School. Bishop McGinnis Catholic High School has a long tradition of educational excellence. They know that children need to be in school and are doing everything possible to make that happen. Bishop McGinnis students were welcomed back last August and saw very few interruptions in 2020. With a 12-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, no student is overlooked. Bishop McGinnis's college prep curriculum offers 22 AP courses. If you want to provide the best possible educational and spiritual development for your children, contact Bishop McGinnis Catholic High School or visit bmchs.org. Financial aid is available. All right, back to the interview. Dan, I feel like there's two other common debates right now between all the NFL draft analysts, and that is, are you a Rashawn Slater guy or a Pinei Sewell guy, and are you a Patrick Surtain guy or a JC Horn guy? Where do you fall in these debates?
I'm definitely a Pinei Sewell guy. For a guy that's 20 years old, I mean, it's just crazy how young he is. He was born a few weeks before Tom Brady made his first pass in the NFL. It's just kind of mind-blowing how young this guy is. And he's 330 pounds, and you see a picture with him, shirtless and nothing but shorts. I don't know where he hides it. His body type is so unique. Just that Samoan background and the way his body composition, it's a really unique player. And one of the reasons I love Tristan Wirfs last year as a prospect is the big man balance. That's what I think Pinei Sewell really offers. And it's not just the physical ability, but his ability to make those split-second reads, the instincts. Mario Cristobal, his head coach at Oregon, calls him the best player he's ever been around. So with Pinei Sewell, I think he gets the edge for me. Now, I still really like Rashawn Slater. He might be, and I don't say this lightly, he might be the Zach Martin of this draft, where could he play tackle? Yeah, I think he could. I mean, watch him against, the tape against Chase Young. He could play tackle, but he might be even better at guard. And so there's, two different ways of thinking. I'm going to let him play tackle until, he shows me that he can't, where other teams are going to say, let's maximize his ability, put him at guard, and we don't have to worry about that position for the next 10 years. So Pinei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, both could easily go in the top 10 of this draft. But I would lean Sewell personally. And then the two SEC corners, it's easy to love both these guys. I would lean Surtain just because, for a guy that's, being the son of a Pro Bowler, having to look up to his dad all those years, he plays so composed. He doesn't panic ever. That's just not how he plays. He trusts his technique. There's a lot to like about his mental process. And I mean, for a guy that showed up in Tuscaloosa and started from day one for Nick Saban, that says a lot. And that's also, I think, a reason why teams really like JC Horn. His coaches say that the day that he showed up as a freshman, he was the guy leading the culture change as a true freshman. He's not as brash as his dad was, but he has that type of bravado where, he's going to come in and he wants to be a leader. He's going to lead by example, but he's not afraid to speak up. So both these guys, I think, have that dog mentality that you want. With JC Horn, he's a little too aggressive, where he's going to be a flag magnet. He's the type of corner where every time he gets up from a play, he's immediately searching for the official. It's funny because on tape, it happens every play. Every time a ball is thrown in his direction after the play, he is looking for the official, either to make sure a flag's not being thrown or hoping that flag is thrown. So, he's just a very aggressive player. And, you worry about that a little bit, but I'd rather my corners be aggressive and you just try to reel him back a little bit, as opposed to the opposite, where he's not aggressive enough and you have to try to, get him to, quit being so passive. So JC Horn, Patrick Surtain, both these guys are top 15 players in this draft. You look at the Cowboys at 10, that's a natural landing spot for either one of these guys. The Eagles at 12, the Chargers at 13. There's a good chance that we see those two corners come off the board at, two of those three spots.
Last one, Dan, and we'll let you run, man. I know you're really busy this time of year. Teddy and I, it was hard to explain to a lot of OU fans that the most talented player here in the state of Oklahoma was actually playing at Tulsa. How, what have you seen from Zaven Collins? Kind of what are you hearing from teams about him? How do they view him? What, inside backer, edge guy? I mean, he's just a big athlete, man.
Yeah, you don't see many 6'5", 260-pound linebackers in today's NFL. It's kind of a throwback. I think he's kind of that natural Sam, in like a Bill Belichick type of defense. Brian Flores with what he does in Miami. And that's why I think those two teams are going to be all over Zaven Collins. The Patriots picking at 15, the Dolphins at 18. I think both landing spots would make sense. Just a very unique player. He's a quarterback in high school. He was the valedictorian of his senior class. And there's a lot to like about just the way he sees the game, because he's not just a guy that's going to dominate versus the run. He's not just a guy that can drop in space or rush a passer. He can do it all. And you watch his tape and you think you're watching a highlight tape, but it's not. It's just his tape. He led the team in tackles for loss, led the team in sacks. He had led the team in interceptions with 4. 2 of those he brought back for touchdowns. He's got a couple blocked field goal, blocked extra point on his resume. So he's just a do everything type of guy. Height, weight, speed is fantastic. The way he moves, the way he reacts. There's a lot you can do with the player like that. Some look at him and say, I just don't know what to do. And, he's just kind of a little bit of a tweener for us and what our scheme is. But for a team that really understands, his ability, he could be that Dante Hightower type of linebacker. So at 15, if the Patriots end up not going for one of these quarterbacks, it screams Patriots pick for Zaven Collins there with the 15th overall selection.
I have no idea how you have all this information in your brain. It is so impressive. You can get all of his great NFL draft coverage at The Athletic. Go subscribe. Dane, you're the man. Thanks for the time, buddy.
Good stuff.
Now, Gabe, Teddy, I really appreciate it. Anytime, guys.
That man, the amount of knowledge in his brain about these draft prospects, that's so impressive. Like, and I was looking at him like, okay, maybe he's just reading off the screen, and he was not. That was all straight off the dome. That made me feel stupid. Honestly, it made me feel dumb.
It's a lot of information in a small amount of time. And hey, I'll say this. It's a tough, like, his segment of sports is tough. It's a segment that's filled with some really good guys that have a lot of good information. So you better come prepared, and he knows his stuff for sure, man.
Yeah, that was great. I was encouraged by the stuff he said about a lot of the OU guys. Yeah. So I'm hoping our man Brugler is right, especially about Creed. If he could go in the first round, that'd be so awesome. Sick. Be so sick. Okay, episode 104 in the books. We'll have a new podcast. I know we're getting up there, man. We're getting up there.
We've got to be coming up on the 1 year.
Yeah, I think here in a couple weeks.
In May or so, probably.
I think
post spring.
I think our first episode last year was late April. I'll have to look it up. We'll celebrate. Yeah. I'm sure our wives will get us cookies again. New podcast that'll drop Thursday morning. Just a reminder, you can hear Teddy from 2 to 6 on Sports Talk 1400. You can hear me from 3 to 5 on Sirius XM Big 12 Radio, channel 375. Hope you all have a great week. Until next time, we appreciate y'all for listening. And do what you always do, Oklahoma. Take care of each other.